Hey, it's good to hear that string of pearls, and it's a song that reminds us all that it's time for Helping Seniors of Brevard. The show is heard every Wednesday, 12 noon to 1 o'clock. I'm John Harper. Your host of the show is Kerry Fink, and as I always like to say, we get a BOGO, a daily double with Kerry. Kerry not only is the host of the show, but he's also the executive director of Helping Seniors of Brevard. Kerry's special guest for today is Dr. Lee Sheldon. So let's get things going as we introduce Kerry Fink.
Hey, John Harper, thank you. It's always great to be here Wednesdays, lunchtime. We gather around the radio here at 90.3 FM WEJF. And welcome if you're listening online at wejf.net. And if you're catching this as a podcast, we appreciate you finding us and sharing that we're available every place you find a good podcast. So kind of with that, I am so excited that we have Dr. Lee Sheldon in the studio with us. We have a great conversation called The Tooth Saving Revolution is Here, and we're going to get into that. How are you this morning, Dr. Sheldon?
Good, and how are you, Kerry?
All is good. You know, we have been really happy to see an outpouring of people who really are honoring, as we have been all this past week, the life of Joe Steckler, the president, and well, he has been for basically all of the time that Helping Seniors has been in existence, which is actually by itself quite a bit of time. Since 2011, Joe was president and founder of the Helping Seniors organization, retired Navy captain whose last command in the Navy was the Navy's retirement home in Gulfport, Mississippi, and he and his wife settled here. He started up the Brevard Alzheimer's Foundation, found out that wasn't enough good work for seniors, even though they call them Joe's Clubs to this day. And then he began our organization, Helping Seniors, in 2011. And here we are all those years later. Although Joe has gone to his final reward, we lost him actually back at the very, very middle of the very, I would call it like the beginning of February, end of January. He was up in Maryland, and he was there peacefully with his family. And we just honor him. He was 91 years old, and boy, he was a fighter. Dr. Sheldon, as you know, and John Harper, as you both know, because you guys have known Joe much longer even than I did. I had the privilege of meeting him as he was launching Helping Seniors and worked together with him then. But both of you gentlemen helped him during the when he was getting the Brevard Alzheimer's going.
You know, Joe and I got together while he was in Brevard Alzheimer's, and while he had that going, and I wanted to do we've talked about this on the air before, that I used to do a TV show here in Brevard County, and so I asked Joe to become a guest, and from the moment that he was a guest, he and I were fast friends. You know, you could see his heart was right there. No matter what Joe did, he did it with full dedication. And what amazed me about Joe is not just how personable he was, but how he could get a group of people to support him. You know, every event, whether it was the Brevard Alzheimer's event at that time, or more recently Helping Seniors of Brevard, which, as you said, isn't that recent anymore, he was always able to get a crowd. He's always able to schedule a big event. The car raffle is a tremendous example of that. Here, he has a fledgling organization, and he just lines people up, and he has relationships with so many different people. If you went to the event last year, even this year, and you saw the number of people who were there, it is just amazing what he was able to accomplish. And of course, his entire dedication was for seniors. And as Joe would say, you know, we've got plenty of kids' charities. There's nothing wrong with kids' charities, but we have nothing to help seniors. And he felt it was his obligation to make sure that seniors were well treated. And in Brevard County, all of Florida, and I suppose all over, that makes sense because our population was getting older, and he wanted to make sure that there was a good resource for people in Brevard County to be able to make sure that if they needed help, they knew where to go. It was interesting when he did Brevard Alzheimer's. I think he was the model for other Alzheimer's associations because
Yes.
he was able to take that organization and make it flourish. So you go from a little organization to the different buildings to the Joe's clubs and all that type of thing. That was Joe. Joe was always looking for the next rung, for the next thing that was better. How can we make this better for the people that we're serving? And by the way, it was never how do we make it better for Joe. It was always how do we make it better for everybody else.
That's so well said. And I'm smiling because I remember when I met you and I met John Harper. John Harper succeeds Joe. Actually, he was a longtime vice president of the organization, had been on the board, I think, since the inception, just like you were there literally the day that Joe got the whole thing started, too, for helping seniors. But both of you guys knew him going back into the Alzheimer's days. And I think it's a funny story because you kind of got Joe into TV and John Harper got him into radio because Joe was just tireless about advocating for seniors and wanted seniors and families to get educated. And I remember when I met him, he was like, Kerry, I want to do the same thing I did in the Brevard Alzheimer's. I want to be sure we're educating families so that they can make their aging plan. And he was like solely dedicated to making sure that we were helping others in that. And so I love John Harper's story about he was literally, even though he's the owner of the radio station, was there painting the station that day. Joe came in and looked at him. John, tell the story.
That was good. It's that goes back to when I was starting WMEO radio, and goes back to, I believe, 1992,
Wow.
the summer of '92, and so obviously I wanted to get the radio station not only technically ready to go to hit the airwaves, but I also wanted it to look nice. Needless to say, it needed a lot of work, a lot of repairs. And it was a hot summer day. I had no air conditioning in the building, and I had been painting the walls on the inside of the building for a couple of hours. And in walks this gentleman, and he said to me, "I'm looking for the manager or the owner of the radio station." And I said, "Well, you found him." And he said, "Where?" And I said, "That's me." And I was covered head to toe in paint. A bucket of paint had fallen in my lap, and it was a mess, an absolute mess. But nonetheless, I said, "Well, that's me, and I'm John Harper." And he introduced himself as Joe Steckler with the Brevard Alzheimer's Foundation. And he wanted to know if we could run some public service announcements for an upcoming event that they had with the Alzheimer's. That was at the time a big fundraiser for them. And I believe it was when they displayed art and then auctioned it off. And that was pretty successful for them. And he wanted to know if we could promote it for him. So, of course, I said yes, but Joe, you're going to have to wait until we're on the air, and that may be another couple of weeks before that happens. But we were on the air in time for his art auction for the Brevard Alzheimer's. It was a big success for him and the organization. And at that point, I said, "Well, Joe, why don't you just come on every week and be a host?" talking about the various things associated with the Alzheimer's Foundation. So he said, "You do that?" And I said, "Of course. You'll be our first talk show host on the radio station." So Joe was in the class of '92 and and our first talk show host, and he was the longest running talk show host in the area, and something that I think he was very proud of, and we were too.
Yeah, it's fantastic because I know we've talked about that. You are the longest running talk show host, but
Yeah,
he was kind of your sidekick and
that's
kind
right.
of catches the second part of that. Dr. Sheldon, you got him started in television because when I met him, he'd already done hundreds. It seemed like hundreds of TV shows, radio shows, everything he could do to get information in the hands of seniors. And you got him on. You were doing a TV show at the time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the name of the show was Checkup. It was on for over great years. And actually, somebody took over for me after I kind of said, "All right, I've done it long enough." So Joe was a guest on that program, and that's how we met. And then after that time, then we all got together. John got involved, and we did some TV programs. And John, I'm not sure if you were involved in the TV programs, but here's what I remember. And I'm going a little bit off topic. And Jim, if you want to cut out what I say, go right ahead. But there was we were doing TV for a while, and it wasn't live TV. Of course, it was all pre-taped at that time, or whatever you would call it. And I remember that we set up a table and we set up a backdrop, and on that backdrop there were paintings which had to do with the art auction. I know that, and it was by a local artist who was a very well-known local artist. I can't remember his name now, but he was known for horses' rear ends, and I didn't know whether that was a reference to me by putting those pictures up there, or whether he wanted to promote the artist. So we had a good time, and I think that was one of the things that was another hallmark for Joe. And I know, Kerry, you'd see that, and Jim, John, you'd also say that is that he always wanted to have fun doing something. It was not going to be a chore. It was going to be something that we're going to enjoy, and we're going to enjoy together. And hence the relationship that we have. All of us have been together for years. All four of us that are on this broadcast right now. We've been together for years, and it was Joe that put us all together. Now, John, you and I knew each other for a different reason. Kerry, you and I got together because I needed some video help for some of the promotions that we were doing in our office, and so and also for the organization that I was running at the time, the consulting organization. So so we got together through Joe. Jim, I don't know how you got involved, but you were the last of the four of us that got together. And
Joe could hook him. He could grab anybody and get you involved. And I'll tell you, he was just a wonderful, wonderful person. He really was. 38 years in the Navy, and then another 38 years or so after that serving. He was always in public service one way or another. So I used to joke with him about hitting a fishing boat with his submarine or something like that. And he'd always kind of look at me. Of course, he wasn't quite sure, but he was a graduate of the Naval Academy, and he was just an all-around great guy. And I don't know. I thought the world of Joe, and I know a lot of other people did as well. So, he could. All he'd do is just touch you, and you were his. That's it.
That's good. I was thinking, because we've had such an outpouring of folks. We went back on our If you go to our Facebook page, which is Helping Seniors at Brevard, we've been putting up little tribute things to Joe all along, and we found a show called Thinking Outside the Box that he recorded March 28, 2014. Now, if you go back in time, this was just about 3 months after he had suffered a debilitating stroke. He was 82 at the time, and I remember his wife, Terry, calls me in and he says, can you come over he was at Sea Pines Hospital recovering from the stroke, and Joe couldn't talk. He was totally bedridden. And so I said, well, of course, I'm on my way. And so we come up there, and Terry is trying to translate for Joe because he really can't talk at this point. But the translation is, Joe wants you to film his recovery. And so that is exactly what we set out, and we did. We followed Joe every step of the way through physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. We ended up just seeing how Joe was coming along. And as he would talk about it, as he was regaining his ability to speak, he would say, Kerry, I want people to know that you can get back up again. You got to fight for it, but you can get back up again. And we filmed that. And so literally 3 months later, he recorded. He literally was the host, the guest, and the topic back then, March 28, 2014, just about 3 months after that stroke. And you would have never known he'd been through a stroke. And B, what is he doing? He's talking about the need for helping seniors to help others. It was a great TV program. And by the way, 1 year to the day of his stroke, we filmed another TV program, which we put out on the Facebook site too, where we got to speak with his emergency room doctor, the first responders, and all these folks. And I'll never forget, the emergency room doctor came in to meet Joe and said, "Wow, you look a whole lot better than the last time I saw you." And it was true, because that's just how Joe wanted to make sure people would know that you can tackle these things of aging. And so people ask two things. They say, what's going on? Is there going to be a service for Joe? So Joe was up in Maryland with his family. He was in hospice for those last few weeks of his life. And what his son and family have relayed is that he went peacefully with his family by his side, and that he is going to be interred at Arlington Cemetery, because Joe spent a great part of his career actually in the Pentagon there in that area as well. So that's kind of another home territory for all of them. And then the family kindly invited. He said, when people express, say, do I send flowers? What do I do? They said they would prefer that you support Joe's charity, Helping Seniors of Brevard. And what we are doing on this side of it is we established a couple of years back part of the Helping Seniors, called the Helping Seniors Foundation, which is very similar to what Joe had always had in mind. He did it at Brevard Alzheimer's. He put together an endowment so that the organization would be able to go forward, in perpetuity. And that's the same idea that he's always had in mind for Helping Seniors. So anything that somebody wishes to donate or honor Joe's life with, you get it to us. We're going to put it especially in that segregated account, so it's not in our regular operating funds. We want it set aside because our effort is to build an endowment, just like Joe was able to do for Brevard Alzheimer's. But you can reach us. I'm going to give you 3 ways that if you're so inclined, you could contribute in. You could always call us at 321-473-7770. And I'll say that number again, so you got a second to grab a pencil. 321-473-7770. There's information. You can find more at helpingseniors.brevard.org. That's our website, helpingseniors.brevard.org. Or actually, if you want to jot down, you can also mail a check to P.O. Box 372-936. Let me say that again, because there's a lot of numbers in that one. P.O. Box 372-936, Satellite Beach, Florida 32937. And we will keep you posted, because Joe's home church here is Holy Name of Jesus, right there beachside. And the family indicated that there is going to be a service here. And we will let you know as soon as that's scheduled and what's happening with that, because I know so many friends of Joe want to come out and honor his life. And we're just grateful. I think it's a blessing, Dr. Sheldon, that we've had the privilege of knowing him all those years.
Oh, we have. I don't know if you know this, Kerry, but I'm Jewish and have been a member of Temple Beth Shalom for many years. Joe was the only non-Jew to receive the Crown of the Good Name Award from Temple Beth Shalom.
Wow. Well, he certainly deserves it. That's for sure.
That's for sure. This is his legacy. The fact that he wanted to make sure that this organization was built so it was self-sustaining. Because you probably aren't aware that Joe was running the entire organization up until maybe 3 years ago or something like that. But he wanted to put all the particular pieces in place so that he knew that the organization was going to sustain itself. And so that becomes Kerry, and that becomes John, that became Nancy, it became Karen. All of the people who were really dedicated to this, to helping seniors, got everybody involved to make sure that when it was time for him to move, and he moved just a few months ago to go up to Maryland, he knew that the organization was in place, and it was going to remain in place, and it was going to grow. And that's what Kerry and John, and really all of us, are dedicated to now.
Yeah, so well said. I just, it's a great honor, and I think Joe was a visionary because when he called us all into this all those years ago, the need for helping seniors is only greater because we have more seniors than ever before. Just because more people are aging in, the number of people turning 65 every day is incredible. People are just flat living longer generally. I mean, it used to be odd that it was so odd that they would actually stop down on a national news program and honor somebody turning 100 just not that many years ago. And now almost every assisted living has people turning 100, on a regular basis. So people are just living longer. And of course, being in Florida, this is where everybody wants to come. So it's just a great place to be, great organization. And all of us, we know we have big shoes to fill, but we are going to do our very, very best to make sure that we don't let Joe down as far as his legacy goes. So thank you for standing with us. And with that, we're gonna start the topic and then continue it into the second half of the show. But Dr. Sheldon, we did have a fun topic that I really thought has a very provocative title. The tooth saving revolution is here. And I remember I commented to you, I think the last time we were on the radio, that as a kid growing up, everything was about those TV commercials for toothpaste and saying, make sure you don't get a cavity. Make sure you don't get a cavity. Brush your teeth every day so you don't get a cavity and you get a good checkup when you get to the dentist. And then I wish I had met you earlier in my life, Dr. Sheldon, because as a periodontist, you taught us so much that kind of matters, but it's really a whole lot more important if you think what's really going on in your mouth. And we're talking about, as a periodontist, you're looking at gums and all kinds of things. And then as we've talked over the years, so much of that actually could have impact on your overall health. So I want to hear what you have to say about the tooth saving revolution. And we're just started now.
we're getting there because the dental implant ads are still all over the place. And so, this is a PR world, isn't it? We're always looking at public relations and being on the right side of PR. Whether it's correct or not, that's a different story. PR is PR. And right now, PR for dental implants is still very, very strong, which only gets somebody who did dental implants for a living for many, many years and had one of the largest dental implant practices in Central Florida to say, hey, wait a minute. We talked about this on the air before. Wait a minute. And those commercials, they're nice. And you hear all of the success stories because that's all you're going to hear on commercials. Not so fast. Teeth can be saved. It takes talent to save them, but they can be saved. And if we save the teeth, we have a more predictable outcome than we do with dental implants, particularly if you have periodontal disease. And so we've got to go back a step and say, all right, let's look at the forefathers of our organization. And by the way, the American Academy of Periodontology began as an entity somewhere around 1910, 1913, something like that.
Wow.
And techniques developed, also PR developed within periodontics as well. And then we started to find out that, if we do certain things, we do certain things right, we can save teeth, and we can save teeth for a lifetime. As successful as our practice has been with dental implants, the patients that I'm proudest of are the people who came into me and said, I am told that I need all my teeth out, and I'm coming to you for a second opinion, and I see them 40 years later, and they still have those same teeth that they were told to have extracted. So our PR still isn't very good, is it? If people are saying, well, I want to see what you have to say, but the prevailing message is that maybe teeth can't be saved, we've got a lot of work to do, and this is and that's part of this program, part of the article that we'll have in the March edition of Senior Scene magazine, talking about the tooth saving revolution. It's not that much of a revolution. It's been around for a long time. Yeah, we have some techniques that are better. We have some technology that has made things more predictable, but tooth saving is here, and it's got to be at least a consideration when we hear the word extraction. We've got to look at that and say, does it really need to be extracted? Is there another way we can look at that and at least go through all of the considerations, the thought processes first? Because once the tooth is extracted, it's gone.
Yeah, there's no going back.
That's right.
Yeah. So, well, this is going to be a great conversation. We're going to devote the second half of the Helping Seniors radio show to us diving into this tooth-saving revolution. And so we encourage you, thank you for tuning in to Helping Seniors Radio. We'll be back with the second half of Helping Seniors Radio here in just a moment. Stay with us.
And it's time to get the second half of Helping Seniors of Brevard underway for this Wednesday. I'm John Harper, and your host of the show, Kerry Fink, is standing by. So let's get back to the second half with Kerry Fink and his special guest, our good friend, Dr. Lee Sheldon. Kerry?
Hey, thank you, John Harper. Again, thanks for making Wednesday's lunchtime time for Helping Seniors Radio right here every week, 90.3 FM WEJF, online, WEJF.net, and thanks if you're listening as a podcast. And if you're happening to catch us on the air, I want to remind you, one of the reasons that we like the podcast idea so much is because oftentimes, you might miss part of the show because you just got in your car or something, or you just got back to the radio and got it turned on, or you might have missed some of the great conversation in the first part of the show. And so there you can always pull us up wherever you get podcasts, any place from iTunes to Spotify, to iHeartRadio, wherever there's a podcast, you should be able to find Helping Seniors Radio. But the other reason is sometimes we'll be talking of something that has real meaning, and you say, this is what I've been talking to Bob about. Bob needs to hear this. And then you can just send him a link and make that available to him. We always archive everything we do, whether it's what you see in the center of Senior Scene magazine each month when we publish Helping Seniors News, whether it's the radio shows, we make sure that those podcasts are there at helpingseniors.brevard.org. The same goes with the TV shows that we broadcast 4 times a day on Space Coast Government TV. We also make sure that we pop them up there on the helpingseniors.brevard.org website. So it's a great resource. You go in there and search by whatever topic is interesting for you. And today, our topic, with none other than noted area periodontist Dr. Lee Sheldon, is the tooth-saving revolution is here. Welcome back, Dr. Sheldon.
Thank you very much, Kerry. And the tooth-saving revolution is here. Right on. Let's move forward. Let's save teeth.
I see the cavalry riding in over the hill right now. Now you had mentioned there's two areas of dentistry that are talking about saving teeth. And this is, I kind of opened up our conversation about this thing because, as kids, we always saw the commercials that told us, use this toothpaste and your mouth is going to be fine. And we've done whole shows about toothpaste and how all that happened and how much of that could be marketing driven. But you really bring it down to, let's make sure we have a healthy mouth. And I think that's what these two specialties of dentistry help us do. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, so let's talk about the one that I'm not. Let's talk about the endodontist. The endodontist is the one who does the root canals, okay? And root canals are done why? Well, decay gets so deep that it goes into what is described as the nerve of the tooth, which is really a lot of blood vessels. The blood vessels become infected. So at the beginning of that infection, you'd have a toothache. At the end of that infection, you'd have something called an abscess, which is a trapped infection that comes from the inside of the tooth and exits at the end of the root, both of which are problems. One gives you the toothache. The other one gives you an infection that not only is confined to the tooth, but can circulate to other parts of the body and can contribute to other damage, other chronic problems. You name the health problem, it can contribute to that. There is a specialty called an endodontist. The endodontist is the expert in doing root canals. And just so you know, I only have endodontists do root canals for our patients in our practice. We never say, well, we can do that here. It's the endodontist who does that. Why? Because the endodontist does that every day. And there's some technological advances that many endodontists have. And there's also a skill level and a talent level that endodontists have that allow that root canal to be more predictably treated when a good endodontist is doing the work. So we're known for dental implants, as we know, and of course we're talking about saving teeth. We are probably our endodontist's best referral source in their entire practice, or certainly we're in one of the top 3 or the top 4, because we have certain endodontists that we like to work with. We have endodontists that will produce the result. And when they produce the result, that means it's a long-lasting result, which means the tooth will last for a long period of time, and it will be far less expensive to do what the endodontist does than what we would do if we were to extract the tooth and do a dental implant. So all of those things are factored in when I'm making a decision. Is it better to extract the tooth and replace it with a dental implant, or maybe just extract the tooth? Or is it better to save the tooth? And if the patient has the resources to do so, I'll send the patient over to the endodontist to get that work done.
That kind of goes back to, I really thought it was interesting, a TV show. This was actually several years ago, speaking about stuff that you can find in the Helping Seniors library of great materials. But you did a show called Are Too Many Teeth Being Extracted? And it was interesting dynamic because, mostly when you were watching a TV, something will pop up and they'll say, oh, you can get a whole new set of teeth in an hour or a day or whatever they say.
And we do that too. We do that too.
I was going to say, and we've often talked about on the radio that you were really a pioneer, innovator in all the things related to dental implants, and your practice is known for being we did TV shows called The Perfect Smile. We did one with Dr. Matt Sheldon called cosmetic dentistry that may not be as expensive as you think it might be. It's actually very affordable. And he talked about a lot of the techniques you guys are able to do to help people get a perfect smile. But at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is mouth health. And that's why I wanted to ask you, you have a lot of case studies actually on your YouTube channel, right? And you kind of can actually show some of the things that are going on there too, right?
Yeah, the YouTube channel is called Practical Treatment Planning with Dr. Lee Sheldon. I try to put up a new case every week. I don't always succeed, but I try to put up a new case. And it's really to teach dentists and really patients, because I try to do it in patient-friendly language, how to think about the mouth. And I think one lesson which we bring forward, whether you have a lot of money or not, it's looking at the entire mouth before making a decision on a single tooth. In our last YouTube entry, which was done just the beginning of this month, beginning of February, I talked about when is it appropriate to extract a tooth rather than save a tooth. And part of it is budget. And I come up with an example of a patient who I had seen, and she hadn't seen a dentist in 8 years. Why hadn't she seen a dentist in 8 years? Because she had a tooth, had a root canal done. The tooth needed a crown. She couldn't afford the crown, and so she ended up losing the tooth. That was pretty serious. She spent all the money for the root canal, and she ended up losing the tooth anyway. Where if we knew what her budget was in advance, and if we told her all of the other things that were going on, we could have said, maybe it's not worthwhile spending all that money saving this tooth because you've got 3 teeth which have significant cavities in them. Why don't we take care of the cavities in those teeth? It's a better way of spending your money. Well, now it's 8 years later, and the three teeth that likely could have been treated 8 years ago need to be extracted. So now she's lost 4 teeth because she spent too much money on one. The principle here is you just don't look at the mouth tooth by tooth. You look at the entire mouth. You look at the relationship of the teeth, and you look at the disease prevalence in the teeth. And yes, we have to confront budgets as well so that you can make the best decision overall so you can keep as many teeth as possible. We talk about the fact that the patients come in here and they have a 2-hour examination with one of the doctors here. Well, why does it take us 2 hours when others can do it in 10 minutes? It's exactly that reason. we will take our time in order to be able to look at everything before making a decision on any individual tooth. And then we will come up with priorities and we'll come up with budgets so that when patients are making a decision, they understand what the entire ramifications are for treatment, not just one. And there's multiple treatment plans based on different budgets rather than, and you can make a decision as to what you want to spend and what you're going to get for it, rather than saying, well, you got a toothache here, let's get the root canal done, and ignore everything else. So at the beginning, when I'm seeing a new patient, when any of us are seeing new patients, we want to spend a lot of time with that new patient visit. Even if the patient is in pain, we might even get the patient numb just to get them out of pain so we can look at the entire mouth first and then decide whether saving the tooth is better or extracting the tooth is better. And that can be made before you spend a lot of money on any single tooth.
So again, like we're kind of focusing in on this topic of the tooth saving revolution is here. And you say that there's really two practices that make sense here. We're talking about periodontics and endodontics. And I want to come back on periodontics in a minute, but this article, The Tooth Saving Revolution is Here, is actually going to be in the March 2025 edition of Senior Scene magazine, because we publish our little Helping Seniors newsletter each month in there, and it's 12 pages chock full of information that is designed to help you along your aging plan. And you can find Senior Scene in, literally 500 places around the county, and we also make sure it's online. But in the article, Dr. Sheldon, I was thinking about this. You were talking about that when you see like an endodontist, you're talking about the fact that they have like very specialized techniques to be able to kind of get in there and resolve whatever's going on with the tooth there. And you say that it's actually they're able to pump disinfectant into root canals and things like that. So are those the kind of things that an endodontist does? And, I guess the technology is probably helping them there too.
Yeah, when the endodontist is taking the remains of the inside of the tooth out, there's limitations, mechanical limitations by the instruments and the shape of the root. So enter a new device, which isn't so new anymore. It's probably about 10 years old, called Gentle Wave, which combines technology along with disinfectant to allow that disinfectant to get into the parts of the tooth that the endodontist can't reach. When that occurs, the patient has greater success. Now, I just in preparation for this show, I contacted one of the endodontists that I work with, Dr. Carl Jones, excellent endodontist, and I said, "Yeah, just educate me. Tell me where we are right now." And so he gave me some more on this Gentle Wave technology. It's a technology that has been developed in other areas than was applied to the mouth. And so for him, what that meant was, well, let me go back a step. When a root canal fails, there is a surgical root canal you can do where you elevate the gum tissue and you go to the end of the root and you cut off the end of the infected root and get rid of the infected material that's within the bone there. It's called an apicoectomy. He said, since I've started using the Gentle Wave, I'm doing far fewer apicoectomies. That's testimony to the fact that his mechanics are good, but the Gentle Wave does things that he isn't able to do mechanically in order to be able to save more teeth and keep patients out of surgery.
Wow. Well, we've talked about this so often, how, your practice over the years, you've always been on kind of the cutting edge. I think you were one of the first offices to bring in CT scans and things like that. And I know that you, because I remember years ago, you explaining how the whole perioscope works to help you get under the gum line so you can see things there. I wanted to kind of have you comment on the technology and how far that's bringing things in treatment.
It's true. The technology is tremendous. And again, it hasn't caught on very well. I am speaking in Phoenix in May about this very topic, and that is root magnification. There is, when the root surface gets diseased, and I'm talking about the outside of the root now, where periodontal disease exists, it means that bacteria forms on the root. It digs into the root and it calcifies into something called calculus. And that calculus is very, very difficult to see and very, very difficult to get off. And that was the reason that gum surgery was done for so many years, was so the dentist could see it, or the periodontist could see it and get the calculus off. But even then, we're limited. What happens if the calculus is accumulating in an area where we don't have direct vision? Well, we start looking with mirrors and things like that and hope that we get to the area, but we're limited. But imagine taking a camera and placing that right into the defect. It can be in any part of the defect, and we can look on the screen and see whether the calculus is there or not. And when we see it, we then can come up with the tools to get it off. And with the endoscope, we're able to do that non-surgically. So in the year 2000, we said, heck, enough of this. Let's see how much we can accomplish non-surgically. And that technology has gotten better and better and better, but it requires a very skilled hygienist in order to be able to use that, and then a lot of patience with the hygienist to train that hygienist to use it and use it correctly. But it allows us to treat periodontal disease without surgery and without laser, and to get a good result. Fast forward now, and we've talked about this on the air, where there's some chemical treatments that we can use on top of that to dissolve even more calculus and get the tooth even cleaner than it was before. Because as much as we could clean it mechanically, there was still a little bit of calculus left. It's called micro islands of calculus. You can only see it under the microscope. Our scope magnifies 40 times, and that calculus is even smaller than that, so you can't see it. But in the laboratory, by applying a chemical called EDTA, it will dissolve the last bit of calculus and get the areas more infection-free, non-inflamed, and in many cases, reforming the bone that has been lost simply by getting the root surface totally clean.
Yeah. I was really thinking that one of the things, as you were talking about that, we've talked about the importance of a correct diagnosis as well. And I know that's a topic that is so important in this, because I guess, most of the time as a patient/customer, we're like, just make it stop hurting. That's where it usually starts for a lot of us. And you're always serious about making sure you kind of get a full view of what's going on, so that you can make like a treatment plan. And I know we've talked about this. This is such a benefit to us as a little charity. You do a program called Solid Bite Gives Back. And so you end up doing a $600-700 new patient examination, very comprehensive, but you make it almost free to the patient because it ends up being a small donation into helping seniors. But it also gives you tools that you need to work with to make sure that you can determine what's important and what could be delayed, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's true. I need certain tools in order to be able to do my job. And I can't just say, well, come in for the examination. And then once you hear, well, I need x-rays. And then I need a CAT scan. I need this. I need that. And it becomes, I'm nickel and diming the person to death. So let's do it this way. Give a $50 donation to Helping Seniors of Brevard. Let me determine the diagnostic tools that I need. Let me use all the diagnostic tools. You only have to pay the $50 to Helping Seniors of Brevard, and I get to see you as the patient the way I want to see you, so that I can come up with the different treatment plan alternatives that I think that are going to work. And that way you're thinking about your mouth for your lifetime, not just thinking about the toothache today. We began as an emergency service. We began extracting teeth. That's how dentistry began. But that's not where we are right now. Extracting teeth is still the least expensive way of taking care of an infection and taking care of a toothache. But if we want to go to the next step and save teeth, then we can talk about the different options that are there. And if it's in the cards for you, then by all means, that allows you to keep your teeth rather than go to dentures. And that's what our practice is dedicated to.
Yeah, it's exciting. And actually I was going to ask about that because I just got, in fact, it seems like I just got it this morning. I got your news update from Solid Bite, and it's actually pretty exciting. It looks like you guys are starting a new dentist office, and you've got some events coming up, and it just looks like the practice is just, really moving along. But I wanted to ask you, well, you can comment on whatever you like, but I wanted to ask you specifically about the event, because I remember I was wondering if this was like one of those places that I had been to before where you kind of really give an education. It's really a nice education to learn all the things that you probably should know about your mouth and how to care for it, and different things that might be available to you.
I've got to tell you, one of the things that we've noticed once we started going directly to patients rather than just referrals was that there are a number of people who just were afraid of the dentist. They just didn't want to encounter the dentist at all. Until they had to. And then how do you meet a dentist? Well, for some people, just walking into the dental office will just make you cringe. But so we've decided to do a dinner event, and it's going to be at River Rocks. It'll be on February 24th. You can call the office at 321-259-8000 for more details, where we'll have a dinner where the three doctors will be there. We'll talk about the different scenarios and how we treat them. We'll introduce our personnel. We'll introduce some of the technology, but more important, we'll talk about the patient experience. And at that point, you can make a decision. All right, if you're ready to walk into dentistry, you don't have to walk into the office first. You get a dinner first, and then you can decide whether you want to come to see us. So we had done lectures here at the office for many years, then stopped it during COVID, and now we're starting this one again. It's going to be a trial event. We're going to see how it works out for us and for potential patients. And River Rocks is a great place. It'll be inside in River Rocks, and so we'll be able to show some of the equipment and do a little PowerPoint presentation. All three doctors will be able to talk, and you'll be able to interact with us one-on-one and just have a dental experience, but not be in the dental office.
No, I remember this. It seems like it must be 10 years or more now. I could be wrong, but I remember Tammy and I attended one of these. I think it was close to your office or something. And I remember thinking like it was really educational. And the last word that would come to mind was salesy, because it was just really, you were sharing things that we ought to know, and it sent us home thinking about things as opposed to necessarily like, oh, they're going to twist my arm and I have to do something dental tomorrow. It was really you guys really spent. How often do you get to sit in a room with three highly trained medical experts, dental experts who have really cut their teeth? I mean, you, Dr. Sheldon, or somebody they call from all over the country to help guide other practices on how to do what they do well. And what a great opportunity is. And you say here there's dinner involved too?
Yeah, and River Rocks has some good food. So come on over. It's a good place to go. So yeah, it's a nice room there. We're going to have, the room will hold about 50 people. So considering our doctors and staff, it'll really hold about 40 people.
Right.
The first 40 people come in, and usually spouses will come along. So we're looking at 20 interested families in talking about saving your teeth. And we'll talk about dental implants too. Of course, dental implants is a big part of it as well. We're not emphasizing that today, but we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, but I mean, I remember that you really covered the gamut, and you made us aware of things that we didn't even know were possible, because so there's several aspects of it. Several of these things that we're intimidated. It's not like there's typically you even know necessarily what you should be asking for. And so this is a great opportunity to get that information and kind of just increase your own level of understanding. And, we were talking about Joe Steckler, our president and founder, at the beginning of the show. And I said, that was Joe's thing. He was always about education for people, because the more you know, the better you're going to make informed decisions about everything you choose to do. And so rather than just reacting to some ad you see on TV where they say, oh, we can do this, why don't you invest a little time and really make sure that you understand what it is that you're contemplating, and get some, the other thing I always talk about, Dr. Sheldon, is get somebody 100% local that knows this area, knows the people in this area, knows everything, and has a really solid established track record, as opposed to calling some 800 number you saw on TV.
It's true, because you talk about the it is the dental implant, the it is the filling, the it is the gum disease treatment, whatever the it is, it's the person delivering that treatment that makes all the difference. And so, yeah, I mean, we've been around for a long time. Matthew and Michelle have taken what I've done and they've moved it forward. I'm here for For my good looks and personality. That's about all I do here anymore. But they have taken it to a better level. And what I did, I said that to a patient yesterday. We're known for fancy dental work. We're known for what we do, and our results are good. And we will put up our results against anybody in the country. But you know what else we're known for, Kerry?
Mm-hmm.
What we don't do. What we decide not to do. So, you don't necessarily walk in and say, all right, he does all the fancy dental work, which we do. But there's sometimes when you don't need some things that are sometimes recommended to you. We'll tell you that too.
Yeah. No, I love it. So again, we're talking with Dr. Lee Sheldon of Dr. Sheldon and Furtado Solid Bite. So we're going to give out the number, but there's two reasons you might want to call the number. One is to ask about the Solid Bite Gives Back, where you can get that whole process started. It helps the work of helping seniors. It's going to help yourself because you're really going to understand everything that's going on with your mouth, and it could be for as low as a $50 donation to helping seniors. But then also ask them about, can I get in on the dinner event at River Rocks Restaurant Monday, February 24th? And the number to call Dr. Lee Sheldon for information and about those is
321-259-8000.
That's 321-259-8000. And so thanks, Dr. Sheldon, for sharing your time with us today. I have just a moment left to remind you that we just got kicked off on the Helping Seniors Car Raffle. This is the 9th annual Helping Seniors Car Raffle, and we had the pleasure of being out at Trinity Wellsprings Church on the 1st of February. We had out a beautiful Mazda Miata, which is one of the cars you could pick from. There's actually 7 in the car raffle. And we also had out a beautiful Mitsubishi Outlander, just like our winner, Diane Pelak, chose year before last. I don't know if you remember last year, our winner, Jim Newman of Cocoa, he picked up a Chevrolet Colorado truck. So there's 7 amazing vehicles in the car raffle this year. And we had a chance, they have a big car show that they do at the start of February called the Higher Power Car Show. And it's the 16th annual one of those. We had a great time out there. Tickets are now on sale. You can get them at helpingseniorscarraffle.com. You can call us at 321-473-7770. They'll get you tickets that way. And it's just a great way to get involved and help us support the work of helping seniors. So that's about the time we have for the show today. Thanks, Dr. Sheldon. We'll see you right back here on the radio next Wednesday, 12 noon.